What's happening, guys? So I got another really good question from a client for a video topic, so I want to cover that today. It's kind of a multi-part question, and I'm just going to read it and kind of paraphrase a little bit because it's kind of a longer question, but it's basically asking, you know, my point of view on drop sets and supersets and when they should be included in your training. You know, should they be like during a bulking phase, cutting phase? If you're doing supersets, should they be trained as opposite muscles like biceps and triceps, or do the same muscle back-to-back sets? And just kind of how and when you should use them. So it's a really good question, and obviously depending on what your goals are and what you prefer, this could vary quite a bit. But I think in terms of what's more optimal, I think it's best personally if you use them only sparingly and kind of towards like the end of a session or the end of a muscle group or the end of an exercise. So personally, I think it would be better suited for more of a cutting phase, just to kind of get a little bit extra energy expenditure from your training. You know, as you're in more of a maintenance or maybe a gaining phase, I don't think it necessarily requires that type of work. However, there can be benefits to it. Now, you got to understand, when it comes to building muscle, there's several things that come into play, but the number one factor that usually seems to come into play is your total training volume. So if you are doing things that are going to fatigue you greatly to get things like mechanical stress, time under tension, metabolic stress, muscle damage, all these different things that factor into building muscle, while there can be benefits to it, if you're really sacrificing your overall training volume, it might not have a huge amount of benefit. It might not make sense. And one of the things we really have to keep in mind with our training is we have to account for fatigue, not only from exercise to exercise, but you know, day to day, week to week, and literally your entire cycle, every block of training that you do, you have to always keep in mind fatigue and how to manage it. So if you're running out and you're just blasting yourself with every single exercise that you do on every single set, you're going to run yourself into the ground and you're going to have a hard time recovering, and things are really going to suffer. All right? Your training is going to suffer from this. So it's in my opinion, it's better to be a little bit smarter with it, a little bit safer with it. Smarter might not be the best term, but I hopefully you get what I'm getting at here. And now, while I can't give like just a general approach, everyone should do this, everyone should do that, everything is very individual. All right, like I said, not only based on where you're at with your training, you know, your training experience, your personal preferences. You know, personal preference makes a big deal. Like if you really thoroughly enjoy a certain type of training and that's going to help you adhere to a training program, by all means do it. Like if you just love supersets and drop sets and that's your thing, and it just brings you great joy, by all means do it. But if it's going to fatigue you greatly, you have to keep in mind that you might not be able to perform as well, and your training is going to suffer because of this. So I don't typically recommend doing drop sets all the time. I don't even recommend doing it more than like one time per exercise. So let's just say, for instance, you're doing bicep curls, you're doing 3 sets of 10. Okay, well maybe you do your first 2 sets going to like a 7, 8, 9 RPE depending on your phase of training, you know, leaving a little bit in the tank. And then in your last set, then you can kind of go all out, go to failure. You can do things that are more intense and then you go on to your next exercise. Or maybe if you're doing, say, like back and biceps, you do all your back training first, you get to your last exercise, and now you train till failure, you do a drop set, you do a burnout set of some sort to get a little bit more of that extra muscle damage, time under tension, all that other stuff that comes into play without really sacrificing your training volume earlier. Because if you are always going to failure, your training volume is going to drop just because you won't be able to perform as much, right? So if you're doing 100 pounds for 3 sets of 10, well, if you go to failure every time, you might get 10 the first time, then the second time you're going to be more tired, so you're only going to get like maybe 7, and then the third one you're only going to get about 4, so your volume's going to drop. Whereas if you did 8 every single time, your volume's going to be higher, and not only will you be less tired and sore for that training session, but you'll be less tired and sore for future training sessions, so you'll be able to perform down the road. So if you're always beating yourself into the ground, not only are you going to suffer in that training session, but also subsequent training sessions too. So you have to keep the whole big picture in mind when it comes to this stuff. Now, with your question in regards to supersets, typically I think it's a better idea to do it with, you know, with your antagonist muscles. Sorry, I can't speak today. But anyway, with your opposite muscles. So if you're doing like bis and tris or quads and hamstrings, things like that, where you can kind of push a little bit harder on both of them rather than doing like biceps, like hammer curls into like concentration curls or something like that, where you're using the same muscle group. I think you'll get more out of it doing opposite groups. Personally, that's the way I look at it anyway. So anyway, there really isn't a right and a wrong answer to any of this stuff. It's just we have to look at things as a whole and kind of figure out what might be a little bit more optimal, what you enjoy, and how to go about things in a different way. But nothing should always ever sacrifice adherence to the plan. Like if you're going to train in a certain way and you just don't like it and you're going to end up quitting, well, it doesn't matter how optimal it is if you're not going to actually do it. So you got to kind of factor all that in and kind of determine what's better for you. But we can always look at things and try to figure out better ways to do things and just play around with it. See how your body responds, see how things go for you, and just kind of go from there. But we all have to kind of determine what's more important with our training for ourselves and then just kind of go from there. So hopefully that answered that question. I know that was kind of a long-winded answer and kind of went in different areas, but hopefully that helped. If you have any questions, please just let me know. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video.
I'm addicted to the love that you're giving. Every minute, every day I've been craving.